My UFO experience happened when I was in the military in 1988. Me and another guy, we was on patrol. I was in the U.S. Air Force at that time, and we was on patrol in Panama City, Panama, the one in Central America, and we was on patrol and we seen this object in the sky.
I think that the testimony is rich and loaded in additional hidden language that manifests through this procedure, that we detected additional insight into the testimony of this UFO witness. There is additional testimony that appears to me to tell a story of perceptions of extraterrestrials, perceptions of symbols.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Fenton Perspective here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. I'm your host, Lorian Fenton. I'm very happy that we have John Kelly with us here today. His website is yourinnervoice.com, so go there, check it out. We're going to go through the website today. It's going to be lots of fun. Now, I was looking at your website, and there is some things I do want to talk about. I hope you want to go there because they seem so exciting to me. It says on your About Us page that you at one point accurately reported the shock and awe strikes that opened the Iraq War. How did that come about for you? And you don't have to expand upon these too much, but how did you accurately report that? Did you go off of a news anchor, or whose voice did you use to do that with?
I studied the inaugural speech of President George W. Bush.
Oh, now that's interesting. Wow. So he must have basically known he was going to do all this way ahead of time, as we all suspected, right?
Well, if you read the Rebuilding America's Defenses, authored by the Project for the New American Century, you'd recognize
Yes, I've heard about it. I have not had time to read it at all.
You'd recognize that a number of the authors were subsequently Bush cabinet administrators. So that team and their ideology moved into the White House and brought their program for regime change with them. Wow.
That's amazing. Cool. Okay. And then you also successfully identified the BTK killer on a Wichita morning radio 15 minutes before he confessed.
That's correct.
What? How did that just blows my mind. Expand on that a bit for me, would you?
Well, as a popular guest on whose work was circulated on morning radio throughout the United States, Europe, and parts, further afield, I was on constant call to produce analysis of news stories, and the prominence of serial killers in 20th century history has been a constant issue in media and social debate. The killers in our midst, so to speak.
Right.
So BTK was a notorious case that broke open in the 1970s, and the known killer submitted letters to local television personalities, the news anchors, and to police, which described the scenes of the crimes in the words that could only be known to individuals who'd been present at the scene. So the police vetted the letters that were sent in. They were taunting letters, you'll never catch me, whatever.
Sure.
But they contained forensic details that police departments would normally withhold in order to prevent against false positive claimants emerging from the population.
Yeah.
So the police said that the letters were from the authentic killer because they described facts of the case.
Wow.
When I came across the story, it was due to the arrest of a city ordinance officer who was responsible for ticketing infractions like watering your lawns on Sundays and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. He had been arrested on suspicion of being involved in this case. And he had given an interview, a jailhouse interview, to the local 6 o'clock news, and it was published online. And I studied that interview. to see if I could identify any sort of implicating statements. And in the course of doing so, I found out that that individual had concerns about, believe it or not, demonic possession. Well,
wow.
Claims of demonic possession were written into the letters from the authentic killer. The authentic killer in the 1970s wrote to police and local anchor people on the TV news that he thought he was possessed by a demon. And so this individual who'd been arrested and was being held under suspicion, I was able to detect a related message that talked about demonic possession. And I was invited on morning radio in Wichita 15 minutes before Dennis Rader appeared before a judge in I believe it was a pretrial hearing. And I produced my evidence on the air, and it was reviewed, and it was a very shocking kind of story. It's very sensational. And so I was on morning radio in Wichita at the invitation of the station, and I presented my findings. I said, isn't it funny that Dennis Rader is talking about this issue in his unconscious sleep-talking-like speech, and that the known killer also talked about this? What would be the odds that somebody would be able to manifest that kind of involuntary material in that way, that I could detect it and be, implicated in this case by police? They already had him under arrest. So that story went on to air, and then at the top of the hour, 7 o'clock a.m., I believe it was 7 a.m. my time or their time, nonetheless, Dennis Rader appeared before the judge, and he spontaneously confessed to all the BTK crimes. And this was it was supposed to be a hearing, but what happened was it turned into a full confession. He was arrested and charged and so on. 2 weeks later, he's back in a holding cell on his way to serve, wherever they're going, federal penitentiary, wherever they're going to send him. He's in county jail, and the 6 o'clock news goes back and does a follow-up interview. And Dennis Rader states aloud to the reporter that he feels like he's possessed by a demon. So the speaker themselves, at a location thousands of miles from my desk, substantiated my claim that they were dealing with demonic possession issues, whether or not those were meaningful in any kind of medical or scientific way. They had perceptions of demonic possession that concerned them and befuddled their consciousness. And that disturbance was evident to me. I reported it before the confession, and the speaker 2 weeks later substantiated my claim. I identified a serial killer using this extremely obscure approach, meaning that IDing criminals due to their demonic possession is not really a normal kind of that's like Night Stalker type stuff, right?
Right.
So that's quite, it was quite profound. And I think that what we're alluding to here are cases in which I beat the clock. And I've been practicing for 20 years, and I've dropped a whole bunch of links and content into our chat. I did see that, and I'm sorry. When I find something fascinating, I kind of grab onto it. I respect that.
I hope you don't mind.
I'm willing to work with you, but I'm willing to work with you and keep the flow going here. Absolutely. But I hope that we will include some of the other discussion points because they will be important to.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. And I just before we get to what you've dropped in here, I see some of it overlaps with what I'm looking at as well. But I do want to just touch base on what you have on your About page, just so people get a bigger overview of you, and especially the part because this is kind of like I do a lot of UFO stuff here on the show. So just to throw this in there, you've done streaming online on-demand video class on UFOs and experimental contact for beginners. And what's that all about? Are you still doing it, or is it something you've done in the way past and you're not doing anymore? How would people find out more about that?
Well, I've moved all of my documentary or workshop-oriented video content onto a private label distribution program.
Gotcha.
Which is called News Inside Out Plus.
Okay.
And people can subscribe to News Inside Out Plus, or they can rent or purchase access to the streaming video content that's hosted at News Inside Out Plus. And so when we get to our discussion, when we move we'll relocate to newsinsideout.com, all of those links will manifest. But right on the very front page of yourinnervoice.com is the link to watch UFO Hotline, which is my latest feature documentary. It's a Canadian independent 72-minute feature. I know you sat through a late night episode, and you were able to sit through at least half of it.
I got almost all the way through. I got 45 minutes in. I think it's a little over an hour, right?
It's 72 minutes, but nonetheless, I think you have a good sense of what that offering is about. But just step back, again, I've been practicing and I've been in the public eye for 20 years. So there's 7,000 or more days worth of content we could talk about. I won't be able to cover all of it tonight, but these stories are sensational stories, and my name was made in the editorial rooms all around the world. If you read my bio and you look at who published links to my headlines and my content, it's like the Wall Street Journal and Forbes.com and USA Today, and the list goes on and on. I'm a former CBS radio feature producer because of the strength of my reporting. And the strength of the reporting, the most important takeaway that anyone could gather from what I'm doing is that I consistently beat the headlines on reporting major international, regional, and local news. And I did it without any insider sources in any agency or government bodies support. I simply did it on the available audio, public domain audio, the speech signals of the speakers. I decrypted the future from my studies of the speech signals of the newsmakers. So
when you do that, as you know, you probably may or may not know this, I'm a big time travel buff. I've produced Time Travel Con, and I absolutely, listening to your 45 minutes of audio, the couple, whatever it was, got to the point where I realized that you're actually tapping into either a parallel dimension or you're tapping into our future timeline, because they're all happening at the same time. Do you believe that as well, John, that it's all happening at the same time?
So past, present, future, under the Shaivite conception, that is the philosophy of Shiva.
Right.
It's all concurrent.
From the
perspective of the infinite consciousness. But that's in the absolute sense. But from human experience, humans reside in a relative world.
True. Of
day and night, of a 24-hour clock or a moon calendar, a lunar calendar. Mm-hmm. And so there are all these different fluctuations that we're exposed to. There's all this relativity that manifests in this environment. But from a perspective of pure consciousness, it's all unified.
Exactly. Yeah. It's basically quantum physics at its best.
It's quantum physics before anyone.
We're vibrating here, we're vibrating there, we're all over the universe.
It's quantum physics before anyone articulated the notion of quantum physics. These ideas are 7,000 or more years old. And
that's true.
We're rediscovering them in the West because as a colonial society, we in our attempts to amass resources, wealth, and empires, we disenfranchised the indigenous communities that already had a strong living grip on these notions, and their lifestyles and their social order and such were oriented in ways that facilitated better performance in the face of obstacles like time-related challenges, such as the time-related challenges that we're discussing in my work, in so much as I surmounted the distance between the time at which I conducted my study and the time at which the events became overtly manifest for everyone to see. I overcame that challenge. There must be something.
Yes.
There must be something to that, and I think it's important again to emphasize the time-related characteristics of my work. For not only did I produce evidence in this auditory research related to time, but if you studied in the links I've shared, if you studied the 5-minute overarching summary of my time and consciousness research, the 5-minute nano film microfestival, you'll see me shooting video of UFOs where I illuminate the sky, and then with a time lapse of 6 minutes, the subject passes with great precision in the part of the sky that I had eliminated 6 minutes prior and provides a display. It flares multiple times. If you've watched that 5-minute, demo reel, which is a composite of my visual and audio studies, you'll see that I'm beating the clock in UFO contact. I'm beating the clock, and it's the same person who has already been vetted by all these major newsrooms and has all this third-party documentation of IDing Russian spies before the Wall Street Journal and identifying the CIA Phoenix program revival 3 years before it was written in The Intercept. It's the same person.
Now you brought up a very interesting point. Why haven't you been drugged to an underground military base and being used to do all this instead of the remote viewers that they've got?
Well, that's a very interesting question, because if you study the layout of the CBS television broadcasting center in Cleveland, Ohio, the facility is actually located in an underground bunker with nuclear blast-proof doors.
What? I had no idea. Now that's kind of interesting.
When CBS television flew me to Cleveland during the November sweeps in 2006, they brought me in for closed-door, on-camera interviews and demonstrations in front of their investigative reporters. And we sat there for hours, and we processed audio, and we listened to the reporters' unconscious statements on camera. And then we had their investigative reporters sit in the room with me, and the hackles that went up on everyone's neck were palpable as I conducted the procedure and demonstrated the findings, and the respect that was shown on the anchor's face when they introduced the segment, the respect that I had earned in that newsroom was significant, because their serious investigation of my work, they could not penetrate the mystery of what was going on in a way that could debunk any of my claims whatsoever. So I've been in the underground chamber, behind the blast-proof doors, but believe me. They put me, they put me in room.
No, I get that.
They put me in room 1313.
Mainstream media grabbed onto you and used you in that sense, John. But seriously, I mean, I know guys that have been part of the remote viewing program for the United States military and the Black Ops budgets and all the money that went into it. I'm just surprised, literally surprised, that you're not, weren't dragged, maybe kicking and screaming, maybe completely zoned out, into a black van somewhere, and we haven't heard from you since. I mean,
I'm speaking to you today from beautiful, sunny Vancouver, British Columbia, in the middle of our summer, my hometown. I'm safe. I'm at home. I'm at my office. I'm at my desk. Everything's great. There are none of those kinds of issues that, in the way you describe them, accompany my work. But but to say that, it would be foolish to say that somebody who had breached the intelligence security perimeter of the Pentagon's war room in 2001, it would be foolish to say that there weren't any sort of repercussions.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. So you did do that. You did breach them and cause them a little panic.
I wasn't there to talk to witness what may or may not have occurred, but it's a factual claim. I've shared the link with you. If you see in our chat, the historic radio report on KXLY Spokane, Washington, dated January 25th, 2001. It resides on an audio cassette with the station letterhead stamped on the label. And that show is still on the air. Any party who wished to investigate this could simply call the show and ask to look at the calendar from that date and ask who the guest was. It's as simple as that. This is all witnessed. What I'm talking about are facts that were witnessed by hundreds of thousands of people, if not millions, over decades, with all this independent third-party documentation. I can't go out and forge station watermarks and put them on cassette tapes and then create mock radio shows with fake people. That's nonsense.
Oh, yeah. No, I totally get it. And I'm hip to what you've been doing. You've done some extraordinary work. And that's why I'm still sitting here absolutely mystified that you aren't being, drug away in the middle of the night. But we'll talk about that more. We've hit our second break already, which I'm absolutely flabbergasted. This is flying by. So, folks, stick with us. We'll be right back with John Kelly, and we're going to talk a lot about what he's doing right now and what he's going to be doing for your futures, because I can tell he knows. We'll be back in a few minutes. Welcome back, everyone, to the Fenton Perspective here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. I'm your host, Lorian Fenton, and we're here today with John Kelly. Now, John, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start going through what you gave me here. We've already touched upon a few of these, but I want to get into a little bit more about each one of them into much more detail if we can. And let's start it, back where we started from at the beginning of the show, where we started talking about the 72-minute video that's out, the UFO Hotline. And let's talk about that a little bit, because the article is UFO Hotline articles. The first one is Transcending Time UFO Hotline on California MUFON Radio. And there is a transcription, I believe, in that article about what we talked about during the show. Is that correct?
There's an annotated transcript where I expand on some of the concepts that we had in our brief discussion that we touched upon.
Great. Perfect. So people can read that. So where is that on the website so they can go to that? It's right on the home page, if I remember correctly.
Newsinsideout.com. Just go to featured story on the front page, left-hand column. You'll see Lorian and myself featured under the banner UFO Hotline.
Perfect. Okay, so everybody's going to check that out. That'll be lots of fun to read. And then watch the documentary, you guys. You got to pay a few bucks for it. It's well worth it, though, I got to say, because it's going to change your mind completely about how you see the type of speech patterns that John analyzes. And I don't want to call it the old RS like we talked about in the past. John, besides reverse speech basically is what people were calling it in the past. What do you call it now, and why is it a different modality for you? Because I really enjoyed the way that you dissect the speech patterns and the words that come of these patterns, and not as reverse speech, but as a whole different type of what you call the inner voice. How do you describe that, what you do for people, as compared to the old reverse speech that came around in the 90s?
Well, I emerged as an insider in that community, who was as a dissident who left that community for some very important reasons that are well understood by professionals in mental health. There is at least one affidavit dated 1999 still residing on the internet. I'm not hosting that document. I'm not the author of that document, but I'm aware of it. I have a copy of it, and it's very informative about the culture, the cultural climate within which that practice was occurring, and within which people were seeking therapeutic support and seeking educational support. It's a very indicting document. I don't necessarily want to read the details.
Sure.
of it on the air.
Yeah, no, I don't want to either. I don't want to go into all the whatever. I just want to focus in on how you've changed it quite a bit. You changed my whole point of view about it by listening to your documentary. Well, I got to tell you, it completely changed my whole point of view. I had not wanted to go down that road ever. I never booked anybody who did it on my shows. I just thought it was whatever. And now, after listening to what you did, and what I loved about you, John, like I said in our first interview together, was that I absolutely love the fact that you've gone over things and said, well, I don't understand it, so I'm just moving on. And I love that about you. You don't rehash it, try to make it into something it may or may not be. And like I told you, you were open to the fact that I told you I heard things in there that I thought you hadn't heard. And then you said to me during the interview, I believe it was you that said it. It may have been me in my brain that said it, but that everybody kind of hears a different interpretation sometimes. Is that true?
You had stated that, and the transcript supports what you're describing. And in our annotated version of the transcript, I expand on this to include some very important caveats, which are that I don't warrant that people will be able to audibly resolve what I hear. I don't warrant that I can make anybody hear anything. And I don't warrant that I can hear what other people hear. Those are all caveats that accompany my work. Now, I don't warrant any of those things whatsoever. All that really at the end of the day, in terms of, why John Kelly, why his opinions, etc., would even matter, is because my bona fides are based on almost entirely upon unimpeachable facts backed by independent third documentation. I have a track record that demonstrates, as we've just talked about before, that I beat the headlines consistently over a 20-year period, and my findings were vetted by mainstream sources, by sheriff's departments, and the voices of the newsmakers themselves. BTK himself, without any help from me, articulated the statement that he was possessed by demons. These are just facts, and they're undisputable. There's no debate that these events occurred, and those are my bona fides. I'm the person who did that work, and I'm the person who continues to work at that level. So, if a person wanted to learn what it was like to participate in a study where performance of that nature was occurring on a regular basis over 20 years, if they wanted to go swimming with Mark Phelps, to find out what that was like, this would be the chance to do it. And the vetting and the practicum that I went through, when I think about all the opportunity that I had, all the airtime that I was given, you've stated that I was used by the media, but quite frankly, I rode the multi-billion-dollar media industry to my heart's content for years. I was given given so much airtime. I didn't mean to infer that you were used by the media. What I meant to say was I was surprised you weren't used by them to do, and not the media, the military. I understand you were saying that. They're bidding. And my only parallel I could share with you is the bunker story. But nonetheless, what I wanted to say was that that's extremely expensive practicum. To summon the resources to go in front of millions of people like that and make these presentations or to do live demonstrations on the air under those conditions. It's incredibly expensive. So my good fortune, is just off the scale. How many people are alive today who do anything related to what I'm doing, who have been vetted that heavily in public? True. That's true. So, your stuff is truly extraordinary, very well vetted. It's really amazing, folks. You really do need to get to the UFO hotline, because I went there thinking it was another UFO thing, and then and it was. There were some really good stories. Those three men that spoke, they told great stories, by the way. Certainly. Especially the second guy, if I remember correctly, they were a couple of UFOs, and him and his Army or Navy or somebody buddy in the service saw him, and they went talk about him, and that was pretty cool too. Because, that's exactly how they do work in the military. They don't want to know about it. They want you talking about it, that type of thing. So, So let me ask you this. How did you've got UFO Hotline explores consciousness dimensions of UFO contact via digital decryption. So how did this all come about for you? Why UFOs related to digital decryption? Because I'm a longtime reader and aficionado of the UFO subject since childhood. Oh, okay. And you're a contactee, I take it? In so much as I shot a lot of very high quality daytime, nighttime video of contact incidents. Great. Now, have you ever, do you have any conscious memory of speaking with another worldly or other dimensional being? Well, I can one up that. I have photography that I've shared in the chat that is portraiture of the classical. I saw that. Now, okay, I guess we're going to have to go there, because I was going to save that for later, but let's go there right now, because I'm looking at this and I'm like, what the holy heck? Where did you find these pictures and how were they created? What's going on here? I used a camera. Oh my God. They came from my camera. These are instrumental. You're kidding me. Okay, let's stop. Because now I'm so blown away, my brain can't function. Okay, so I'm looking at this first one, and it looks like a reptilian kind of snake head or something. Yeah, that's a very good description. And if we go one step further, there appear to be a set of claws on each side of the face. That's right. And I'm kind of like, where the heck? Okay, where in your house did you take this picture? Was it like in the dining room, or, was it in a specific spot every time? No, it's not. These aren't location specific at all. Oh, these are like, outside or, on the driveway, or, but they're near where you live, right? Well, Near where I live, well, as the photographer, the living photographer, they were right in front of the lens. So that's pretty close to where I live, I guess, right?
Well, I mean, you weren't like visiting Wisconsin at your aunt's farm or something like that, right?
Well,
I mean, these are all done within where you live in your hometown or, somewhere.
Right. This is regional to where I reside. And,
okay.
What I've emphasized earlier is that they're not location specific.
Okay. So what you're telling me is you could travel to Ontario and be at a hockey game and walk outside and maybe get the same photo?
It's quite possible because I've shot. My catalog of photography. These are just, these are samples from a catalog. They're not the entire catalog, which means that the catalog's populated with a lot of images shot under different conditions. So I produced this very high resolution photography. Your question that led us to this part of the discussion was, did I have face-to-face time, with a hypothetical ET or other entity? That's
sure.
And I think what we really have to examine when we're studying the John Kelly narrative is, I had face-to-face time, all right. I had high-resolution face-to-face time. I'm talking so close. These are 10 megapixel images we're looking at. That's twice the size of 4K, which is the current high-definition standard.
Oh my God, that means these images were huge. Well, I mean, these manifestations are 27, 36 inches across.
Well, this is substantial. And so, this is intensely real. In other words, this is not so abstract and so painfully, irresolvable that nobody else can see them. Because these images are 10 or 15 years old, I've been presenting them at live events and such and had opportunities to share them with audiences. And part of my observation was that the pre-verbal children who would come with their parents would cry aloud. They make a sound upon recognizing the faces because the faces are so high definition.
Oh my God. See, these things are blowing my mind. Okay. So I'm going to describe the second one to you guys. The first one does definitely look like a snake head kind of reptilian being, and he's got little hand claws around his face. And oh my God, you've got to see it. Where can they see this on the website? Can they? Well,
the links are all on Facebook, as a matter of fact. So if people
they're on Facebook. Okay.
Come visit me on Facebook and go into my cover art. In my photos on Facebook. This is all publicly visible. And people can go and see for themselves.
Okay, and that's John Kelly on Facebook?
That's right, J-O-N-K. We are friends there, so you know me on Facebook.
Yes, I do. I do know you on Facebook. Okay, and the second one looks kind of like a pig demon. That's the only way I can describe him, with a sunken in kind of weird nose. He's kind of scary too, I gotta say. Getting close and personal with individuals can be very intimidating for all of us. I mean, how many of your girlfriends go out on dates? I don't have any girlfriends that go out on dates, but yeah. I mean, back in the day, yes. Well, don't people talk about their anxiety about getting close to others? Don't people talk about that? You know what? I don't know, John, because I live a very bizarre life. I don't have a lot of friends, and the friends I do have all worry much more about the ET contact that's going to happen to them that night than a date, to be honest with you. So meeting someone new can be an event that's filled with trepidation for all parties involved. Exactly. Irrespective, you're absolutely right. Irrespective of how, aesthetically pleasing their faces may or may not be. Exactly. And, I was just going to say, my girlfriends would look at that and go, oh, my God, I wonder if I'm going to be meeting that entity tonight, that type of thing. I mean, they're just, it's so funny you said that, because I haven't lived a normal existence where I would worry about meeting a human being and being afraid. That is the last thing on my mind. I am not afraid of people at all anymore. I don't think you're afraid of anything. I get unless that. Unless they've got a gun to my head. I mean, that's the only time I'd be afraid of a human at this point, because I have been through so much stuff that it's beyond comprehension to most people. They wouldn't even understand what I've been through. So yeah, I mean, when you've been on a I'm not even going to go there. I haven't even told this story to anybody.
Oh, here we go. Disclosure.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to do it. I decided not to. But, yeah, maybe someday you and I'll do a clinical session, and we'll talk about what I believed happened and what I think that it's all mind control, actually. I think they put it all into my head
Well, you see,
to get me to do what I'm doing today.
I'm what's called a natural counselor, and that means that people find I'm very facilitatory for this type of rare disclosure that you almost pronounced tonight. And so you can imagine
people are not ready for some of this stuff yet, and some of it has to do with my friend that is now deceased, Max Spears, and I'm not ready for that yet either, because Max isn't quite ready for it either. So, but we are. At some point, we will discuss it, because he's already told me a few things from the other side that he wants me to do. So I will do them at some point. But for right now, it's all going to stay with me, folks. Sorry, not happening yet.
But you can see, because as this process has emerged in our spontaneous talk, that this natural, the invocation of material obviously would play very strongly into my ability as a counselor. Would you agree?
I agree. I absolutely agree. And if I do disclose any of this, I think I might disclose it to you first to get the digital feedback story behind it.
Sure. Well, let's go back. Let's go back to some of the comments you've made on the photos, because I think you've made some very important statements that I'd like to substantiate further. The first image that you described as a reptile offers a portrayal of a literary figure known as the Kurma avatar. The Kurma avatar of Vishnu is a turtle.
Oh, and God, John, you know what you just did? You just backed me into, oh my God, do you remember The Alien in the Freezer with Jonathan Reed?
Okay, yeah.
Do you remember a guy by the name of Phil Kava? Have you ever heard his story?
I'm not familiar with that.
Phil Kava had a reptilian looking turtle kind of guy pop in a portal over his wife, and he's putting a magic wand over her, and only the upper part of his body is seen hanging over his wife. And he looked just like the Jonathan Reed turtle reptilian alien.
I see.
So these guys are interdimensional portal turtle reptilians. So if you think this is that one, I'm not quite sure. His face is a little more snake-like than the ones that Jonathan Reed and Phil Kava saw, because those, you can see their faces.
And they produced high-resolution 10K photography?
No, but he's got the film of it.
They have film.
Do you remember the alien laying in the garage floor?
Well, the alleged alien. I was never able to substantiate his claims.
Oh, okay. God, he'd be the perfect. Oh, God, I'd love to get Jonathan working with you. I'd love to find out if doing your digital work.
That sounds very exciting. What I would like to emphasize is that you correctly identified these characters in so many ways, and all I can offer you, because I'm the practitioner who produced the photography.
You're giving the ancient version of this. And
it's actually the 21st century version of it, because I was performing Tantra sadhana in a Vaishnava context. Vaishnava being
my God! So you're just like a yoga guy too,
like that. So if we look at the face of Kurma, we see that there's an inverse tilak that covers the face. There's this white U shape.
Yes.
Well, normally, if we see the tilak on the Vaishnava devotee, it's an upright V shape with a dot.
Yes.
But here the shape is inverted. The tilak is inverse. For all the great hatha yogis in your community who are familiar with the warrior pose.
Yes.
The warrior pose pulls the foot of the practitioner from behind the head, attempting to touch the top of the head, etc. And so here, it's because the tilak, the V-shaped Vishnu tilak, is the foot of Vishnu on the forehead of the devotee. Here, it's as if the practitioner's own foot had touched the face. That tilak is inverse because it's the one who gives the impression in themselves. Kurma is the literary Puranic in the Puranas, the addendum to the Vedas. Kurma is the second avatar of Vishnu in that series. And the third avatar in that series is the boar Varaha, who appears before us as the pig face that you described.
Oh my God.
But
you're right.
If we closely evaluate the posture of the tongue that Varaha is displaying, it's called Kuchuri Mudra. In Kuchuri Mudra, the tongue is rolled back up into the roof of the mouth.
That's right. I'm doing it right now.
Varaha is prominently displaying Kuchuri Mudra before us. This isn't just your average boar. This pig knows something about mudras. These are distinguishing marks. Tilak, mudra, these are the Puranic avatars. And if we move to the next image is not as high resolution. It was shot, the first two are shot outdoors at different locations in the lower mainland of Vancouver at night. And the third image that I've shared with you was shot indoors. The first two images, the media is water. You know how Dr. Emoto likes to talk, had shared with the world his study? And on a molecular level, he demonstrated using specialized lab equipment that water molecules were transforming under the pressure of psychic influences. That was the premise of his work, very famous work. But here, we're not dealing with laboratory settings. We're using off-the-shelf instrumentation. And the scale of the imagery is gone from the micro scale to the human macro scale, that the molecules have assembled in such an orderly fashion that the thousands and thousands of droplets of water vapor from my breath condensation have assembled in such an orderly and intelligent way to give these portraits of the classical avatars of Vishnu. I was
going to say, in the center, now, hold on, I'm trying to blow it up so I can look at it. I'm going to Facebook. I got to look at the center of this because I see somebody sitting in the middle there. Am I correct on this?
Well, there are many layers of depth to the imagery. And we could go and do an entire hour on sort of like an infinite zoom in to the features, but it wouldn't be really productive to do that. But to say that these are worthy of contemplation and such because of the resolution we're dealing with, absolutely. I would say to you further, if as a person who is familiar with studies and practices in South Asia, that these are actually yantra, and in the classical definition. The yantra is the visual representation of the sound wave, the mantra. So when the practitioner recites the mantra and the breath condensation organizes into an intelligent design that portrays in 10K, ultimately 10K resolution, classical figures from Puranic Sanskrit literature, you got to know that there's something going on.
Well, because I'm seeing three of them right now. I'm seeing Buddha. I'm actually seeing an alien head. I'm seeing an owl. I'm seeing Vishnu. I think so. How many arms am I seeing? 1, 2, 3. I'm seeing only 6, but doesn't she have 8?
Vishnu is Vishnu is in the masculine context. In the feminine context, you have Kali.
I'm sorry. I'm thinking of Kali right now. The one that I have my avatar for here on the network.
That's Durga, like the Divine Mother. Vishnu incarnates as Krishna, and in the Mahabharata, in that narrative, in the Mahabharata, the adventures of Krishna and his party through war and all these different conditions is described. And on the battlefield, Krishna manifests in the Vishvarup form, which is famously portrayed on Axis Bold as Love, the Jimi Hendrix album.
Oh, yeah. God, I haven't thought about that for years, John. You're dating me.
The Vishvarup form was brought into, the Western psychedelic culture through the Hendrix cover art. But this is very significant because Krishna specifically is cited by Oppenheimer, the physicist who was one of the fathers of atomic warfare, who in his translation said that I have become death, the destroyer of worlds.
Yes.
But for the student of Sanskrit who understands that Mahakalo is derivative of Mahakala, Kala being time, Kala?
Right.
Kala,
right.
Kali, you see? Kala and Kali are the masculine feminine pair, the god and the goddess. Mm-hmm. Kala and Kali. Mahakala is the form that Krishna presents to Arjuna. And in the Western folkloric sense, it means that Krishna portrayed that he was the personification of time. Maha means great and Kala means time. Great time is Father Time. It means that time is a person. Although our contemporary materialistic-oriented science is in pursuit of the time particle and the consciousness particle, the ancient indigenous people informed us that time and consciousness are actually personal and are a person.
They are, and they're in every person. And that's
all
what
of us.
We need to understand here as human beings, is that we are all individually in control of our great time. You know,
let's have a great time. Let's start now.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm looking at your picture right before that one on Facebook, and it shows somebody laying in a bed, and this as an image floating kind of over the bed. Why did you do that?
I'm not even sure where you are now. You've lost me. I mean,
I'm on Facebook.
Can you share a link? Can you drop a link in the chat?
Yeah. Let's see. It's the one right before the image, the cover photo image you showed me.
Which of the boar, of the turtle?
No. It's on Facebook. If you click the back arrow button, you will see it says the monolith from 2000.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. I'm with you now. Thank you. I had shared with you an original version of that, and now I've created a montage because I'm conveying the notion that the monolith is a mirror, and that and that the reflection of the creators manifests through that structure. Because I'm creating a cultural montage, bringing ancient and 20th century, classic cinema into the same space. As a young audience member, it was possibly the first or second film that I saw. My father took my brother and I to see 2001: Space Odyssey, probably in 1970 or something like that, when it was still running in the theaters. And of course, I left a very deep impression. I had it left me with a lot to think about old men dying alone. So.
Yeah, I think it kind of did that to all of us. It kind of made everybody wonder if they ever wanted to really do space travel, After
all, it was so good after all. Absolutely. So let's go back just to the original form, which is in our chat. I shared it with you, and thank you for bringing me up to speed. The form against the black.
Oh my God. I can't believe it, John. We just hit the last break. So we're going to have to move on. When we get back, we're going to talk more about Anna Chapman, the secret messages, and George W. Bush. Oh my God. We'll talk about it all. So stick around, folks. We'll be back in a few minutes. Welcome back, everyone, to the Fenton Perspective here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. I'm your host, Lorianne Fenton. We are here today with John Kelly. And before we go any further, I want to reiterate his website and hope that you guys are all there and enjoying yourself, and that you are purchasing UFO Hotline. It's a very professionally done, amazing documentary. It'll really open your eyes up to what's going on out there in the world of digital. What are we calling it, John? What's the new word for it? Digital something, right?
I'm not coining any new terms. I'm using existing language. My website is yourinnervoice.com. I'm a speech analyst. I'm internationally notorious or famous, depending on how you look at what I do.
Well, we're going to call it digital decryption, right?
Digital decryption, absolutely. Multidimensional speech. That's what scientists talk about.
Multidimensional speech, digital decryption. I like that. Maybe I'm putting too many words together, but I do love it. Multidimensional speech is amazing. I love that too. So it's absolutely fascinating. So get to his website, yourinnervoice.com. Check it out. There's all kinds of things to. How many other videos do you have that they can purchase? There's half
a dozen titles on the News Inside Out Plus channel now. And subscribers who subscribed early when we started that service have accumulated a bunch of mini documentaries that are cycled through from time to time as well. So, what's going on is I hope I created a positive impression that I have a really, really substantial, unique and original archival library of audio and visual content that is rare and exclusive. And I'm translating it into accessible media like documentary film. And I am managing all of the production tasks from, production to marketing to distribution independently. And I'm someone who's been through CBS radio and CBS television and, has been in front of the cameras and have been, on the presidential election debate panels and all of this stuff. And I'm bringing my work. I'm ensuring that there's a clear transmission of the signal that is evident in my life experience, in my clinical practice, in my sharing with my colleagues and friends. All of us are co-witnesses to the UFO events in Washington State and here in Vancouver. My great, great friends who accompanied me on all those incredible journeys. I'm making sure that story is reaching people in a meaningful way. I produce instrumental, fact-focused, issue-focused work. I don't have, if you come down to ask me my UFO contact story or something like that, even though I have these very elaborate stories about time, apparently, I don't have stories that I could tell you about life on other planets and my girlfriend on Venus and stuff. I don't have any, the famous contactees and the well-known testimonies and narratives of the most famous of the contactees are far more elaborate than anything I have to say. What I'm bringing is facilitation because the instrumental evidence, as you said yourself, you could study it independently. Whatever I say or don't say to you, I can only give you, the photographer's opinion or the artist's opinion. But what you make of it is entirely upon yourself to discover. And this is the whole invitation. My work offers an invitation to the public towards self-inquiry. And this is a time when self-inquiry, and I heard your preamble, and I thought you made some very important points. This is a time when self-inquiry is a national priority upon all of us.
It is.
Upon all of us, because our great progress will only be realized through the expression of our potential, and that potential will only engage when we make contact with it. Our potential is within us. So let us all make, we're at the zenith of the year now, right? These are the hottest days and longest days. Let us all now ride this wave, through the rest of this year at our best. Let's uplift and let's be uplifting to others, in that way. I can only hope that my work will create this kind of impression. From a yogic perspective, I covered all 8 limbs. I completed Patanjali's, course.
Oh, yeah.
And so for someone who claims that they're photographing Vishnu in portraiture, that would sort of, get you into the Dhyan kind of conception. Dhyan, single pointed concentration on the object of ideation, the subject of ideation. And in the Tantra, the Vaishnava Tantra, the subject of ideation is a person. It's personal. It's personal.
That's right.
I work very closely with my clients in my clinical practice. I offer acoustic physician level services. The great engagement that occurs in those meetings is very powerful and empowering for everyone involved. But as a public figure, I also tackled some of the most dangerous stories possible in my lifetime, and I did so in a fearless way. I don't come before you with arrogance. I come before you with all humility. Most people are surprised I'm still here, given the things I've claimed tonight.
Well, that was my take on it all, John. Seriously.
And
how in the heck is he still with us?
How is it possible? How are these things possible if not our own creative potential that manifests solutions? The solution bringer resides within each of us. And when we engage on a personal level, that the expressions are clear. The expressions are so clear that they're instrumental. And in my case, the video I'm shooting on a 3CCD camera. That means triple sensor imaging. I have redundant triple sensor evidence that supports my claims that those are daylight and nighttime infrared color UFOs. Just a trailer from you see all that production, in UFO Hotline. It's, in some ways, it's just, for those who can't really, get on the flow of that information, it won't really mean anything to them. It'll just be vacuous. But for those who can ride the journey on those sound waves and get deep into the descriptions that manifest, powerful and intense journey, and in fact, it would be incredibly provocative for the audience, and particularly, it's most provocative for the experiencer because they will find, I assure you, they will find parallels in the psychological profiles that emerge from the speakers. They will find parallels in their own experience. It will be meaningful for them that those expressions were given voice, but not in a contrived way, but rather in an authentic manner that was uncontrivable. Quite frankly, the ego has apparently no part in the what we decrypt, because what is described as the censor mechanism of the ego is normally in place to prevent involuntary disclosure. And tonight,
right,
as an example of the vibrations, the atmosphere that accompanies my practice, Lori Ann, I observed that you were in the process, under your own professional guidance, you were in the process of offering an involuntary disclosure live on the air.
I'm so glad I didn't now.
and so what I would,
because it would have been really, it would have been really amazing. But at the same time, I can't prove any of this stuff happened to me. So, John, that's where the hard part is for me. It's not like I can sit here and say, "Oh yeah, you guys, all this happened," because see, I have no idea who did what to me. And when you and I meet in person, I will explain it in much more detail. And maybe you can help me with that. And I got a question for you arising from what you just said. And I didn't mean to cut you off by any stretch of the imagination, but I think this is important. How do you distinguish between people who are mind controlled and a thought is implanted to them to be true, to the person who actually observes and lives it in 3D real time as a human being on this planet without an implanted memory? How do you distinguish between the two in your practice? Because when someone's talking about it, to them it's absolutely real. So is it real? I mean, isn't that the craziest question? Is mind control real, or is the human every day making my coffee and setting the cup on the table here the reality?
Well, I heard the question: is the phenomenon of human speech real? Is what I heard.
That's it. That's why I'm asking you.
Well, in practice, people don't necessarily say what they mean. Isn't that true?
That's true.
That's
absolutely true.
And because there's all these crenulations in the universe due to the perturbations and the oscillations that make it persist. And so we have night and day and summer and winter and so on.
Right.
Today I'm going, oh, it's just too hot. And 6 months from now, I'll be going like, man, put on an extra blanket, So
yeah.
All these,
well, but there's got to be a difference in the speech and the how I talk about what I think is a mind controlled implant to what I would be doing in front of my computer tonight, building a website.
Okay, so to get that specific to what you've just inquired, is that there will be forensically vettable evidence that will emerge in the statements that will be decrypted using this procedure. Because I've just demonstrated previously that I identified correctly the BTK killer, who subsequently, spontaneously, without any prompting from me, substantiated my statements in conscious speech. Those archives exist. I didn't prepare properly tonight. So part of our problem is that communications channels like Skype and Windows 10 are changing rapidly. So the things we used to be able to do 5 years ago were a little easier than they are tonight. But
and it's not just that, John. I don't like to prepare for my interviews.
I see.
As you probably already know.
I hadn't caught on to that, but now it's becoming. I'm beginning to feel more welcome, and your hospitality and your great courage, I think, is the most inspiring part of my connection. I'm connecting with a person of great character. It seems to me. I feel really honored, and so I'm enjoying it thoroughly.
Thank you. I hope I'm not putting you on the hot spot.
No, these are important questions.
I love to get to know people on my radio show. I want other people to know them for who they truly are. And I think if you do this thing all the other big shows do, where they ask for 20 questions and blah, blah, blah. To me, that is not getting to know who John Kelly really is. Well, by you and I having these really informative, I think, and me asking my very personal questions to you, I think, we're getting the true John Kelly here today.
This is the living John Kelly. What I wanted to go back to, though, was I thought, again, the question related to discernment of sources when we're listening to various testimonies. Exactly. And I said that what will emerge in my practice is these forensically vettable pieces of evidence, was a case involving a famous sports figure in Colorado about 15 years ago, 15 years ago. And I produced a study the study was aired in an interview on the Denver, the news talk channel, not the comedy channel, but like the actual, the very conservative, big money news station.
Oh, okay.
They put me on the air with my story, and I had these, some very, medical grade toxic material that I put on the air. And then they responded because I published this in my press release, and that's why they brought me on. They responded by saying, well, we had the sheriff's department investigators look at your claim, and their response was that you described exactly what occurred in that situation as determined by the sheriff's department. So I'm saying that that level of evidence would emerge from the study, and then it would be abundantly clear the nature of the narratives. And further to that, we didn't get to talk about was Russian spies. So why don't we talk about Russian spies? Because
let's do that, because we don't have much time left in the show. I can't believe it.
Really, all the universe's espionage problems really have to do with Russia. They have nothing to do with anything that's happening in the U.S. It's all about Russia. Okay, I just want to clarify that before we go any further.
Okay, I don't quite understand why you don't think that they have anything to do with us. I think we cause a lot of the problems we have through our own CIA and all that. But are you talking just about the Russian spy issue,
I would like, in my sharing with you tonight, and in the important things that you've said and that I just heard you say, I'd like to talk about Anna Chapman and my study of Anna Chapman, which was an infiltration by a Russian spy group into the United States. They were attempting to influence big business and government. And,
okay. Now, this has nothing to do with the recent flap of Russia and the election, though, right?
Oh, well, I think that if we include the post-World War II relations between Soviet Union and now Russia and the United States, then we'd see that was all indelibly linked. It's all historically linked.
Okay, gotcha. So I'm cool. I understand where you're going now. I'm ready to rock and roll.
So our case in point is Anna Chapman, which is a spy ring that was deported from the United States at the end of the first decade of the century. And Ms. Chapman had appeared under the guise of a job seeker at a human resources conference in New York, and they were videotaping the interviews with the applicants. So there was video media that existed of Anna Chapman while she was undercover, and it was published online. And so I used that as my source material. And when I conducted my study, I detected the proper first name of one of her associates, amongst other very interesting details. And I published this information, and 8 or 9 months later, the Wall Street Journal ran a story about this. I named the youth accomplice Tim Foley 9 months before that name was published in the Wall Street Journal, citing unnamed U.S. official sources. So my intelligence apparently paralleled the nature or the vetability of the intelligence that circulates in that climate, but I produced it off my desktop using digital decryption tools that are well known to sound engineering community. Your engineer tonight is nodding his head saying, yeah, I know what you're doing, John. So this is all just, really, this is just industry tools. This is not, I have not invented any new tools. I'm just applying them in a very athletic way. And,
cool.
And so like any great, performer in any field, I'm consistently hitting goals, and I'm able to report that. But the more significant part of that reporting is simply that it should inspire others to think about their own abilities. Anyone who knows me knows of my limitations. You get to know me. You find out what I'm really like.
Well, we all have those. Trust me. The older you get, the more accepting you are of them. And thank God. That's all I got to say.
But really,
anyhow,
the only really lasting benefit of any of this, activism that I've been doing for 2 decades, the only real lasting benefit is that it could inspire, the great potential of others that none of us could presently imagine. I mean, the scale of possibility within us is, infinite. So in this time we see, some people are doing very well, some people not so well, some people are overachieving and other people are underachieving. And maybe, collectively, people can concentrate and bring their collective strengths together to achieve something better. I think there's a lot of very important political topics that have emerged in the niche community, in the UFO community, in the related communities. But there are also reflections of big picture issues that the societies are going through, the political churning that's happening openly. So these different manifestations, this is a very distinguished time to be alive and to be a participant, because these are historic changes, in my opinion. And so the people who leap, and assume risk under these conditions, there's opportunities for character defining moments that are indelible, in that person's character. The forces that are at play are so powerful now, it would seem, that people can really advance if they are fearless in the face of the fire. There was a story in the press in the last 2 weeks about a special forces soldier who'd served 20 years in the military before he retired and moved on to become an international aid worker. And the reporters caught up with him in Syria, where he ran under sniper fire to cross the street to rescue a 3-year-old girl who was lying amongst the bodies of those who'd been shot down. And, the impression was that this gentleman had used his great resources to ensure the future of the universe rather than participate in its destruction. Because if children are the future, he used his great resources to ensure the safety of that child and ensure there would be a future. So that's, an impressively heroic individual, in my opinion. And the modeling in the clinical world is that the inner child seeks this kind of engagement. But for many of us, due to mitigating circumstances of our lives or karma, the different crises that we may have not successfully resolved, that may still have trace signatures in our psyche, the clinician creates a circumstance where that kind of crossing is possible. But it's the participant who crosses themselves. The practitioner doesn't do the work for them. The practitioner creates an environment where the facilitation is possible, where that crossing becomes a possibility, and then it occurs spontaneously. So all of us, in other words, have that. When I see a role model like that in society, of someone with great strength and noble character, I say, we should all aspire in our own lives, the things that we feel are so difficult to us, each of us personally feels our problems to us are painful. We should all aspire to be overcoming and to assume a greater status and not be beaten down by, these different kinds of psychological pressures or other circumstantial pressures. That gentleman was under fire when he crossed, and he crossed, we can cross too.
Yeah, amazing. So, wow, that's a great story. Now, did he save this kid, right?
That's the headline, is that this gentleman was successful in rescuing a child, and he'd been doing aid work for at least a decade and in Southeast Asia. And under these conditions, he was mobilizing people to perform like this kind of rescue work. I'm sure it's a very kind of high profile, movie quality rescue. But the point is that he showed such noble character because, again, someone who had been special forces would be a very top percentile physical and strategic type of a person, out of a population. That person would have be able to manifest extra physical ability and extra strategic capability.
You bet. But absolutely. Well, you're not going to believe this, John, but we have 1 minute left in the show. We're not going to get to Russia today. This is just, it's so sad. But I wanted to get everybody to your website, and you guys visit, I'm at News Inside Out, and I'll just signed up for the News Inside Out Plus newsletter so I can keep track of what John's up to. But what you really want to go to first is yourinnervoice.com. Go there first, yourinnervoice.com, and then check out News Inside Out. Go over to subscribe to the News IO Plus as well, Inside Out Plus, but you're calling it News IO Plus here on the website.
If that's a listing on yourinnervoice.com, sign up for News Inside Out Plus on newsinsideout.com. Sign up for professional services at yourinnervoice.com, the professional services tab. People can read the testimonies from the NDs and the PhDs and the LCWs who audited my practice, who vetted my practice for factuality, who said that I produce psychoactive results and catharsis in one session.
Cool. Excellent. I can't wait. Well, you guys, at some point, John and I will be getting together, and I will be telling him some things that you've never heard before. So we'll let you know the results of that if I dare. We'll see what happens. So, John, thank you so much for being with me here tonight. I really do appreciate it, and we'll have you back again. So thank you very much. John Kelly was our guest, yourinnervoice.com. Check it out. Use him. You never know. He might be able to fix all of your problems, or to at least help you to think about him a little bit. So there you go.
My UFO experience happened when I was in the military in 1988. Me and another guy, we was on patrol. I was in the U.S. Air Force at that time, and we was on patrol in Panama City, Panama, the one in Central America, and we was on patrol and we seen this object in the sky.
I think that the testimony is rich and loaded in additional hidden language that manifests through this procedure, that we detected additional insight into the testimony of this UFO witness. There is additional testimony that appears to me to tell a story of perceptions of extraterrestrials, perceptions of symbols